I'm Mark Dawson from the Self-Publishing Show, and this is Self-Publishing Spotlight, where we shine a light on the indie authors who are changing the world of publishing, one book at a time.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Spotlight. We meet indie authors at all stages of their careers and ask them a series of 5 questions. 5 questions about their process, their mistakes and their successes. 5 answers that will help you level up your own author career. My name's Tom Ashford and I'm part of the Self-Publishing Formula. Don't forget that you can get your self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. This week's guest is Buster Birch. He writes music tuition books and he lives in the UK. Welcome, Buster.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's very great to have you on. So, as you know, the introduction was a little different there because we're not sure exactly how many books to say that you've written because it's slightly different with music tuition books, isn't it?
That's right, yes. So I've got currently 19 books published, 17 on the Apple Store and 2 in print on Amazon. But with my books, the way I write them, there are several editions of the kind of same book. So the books I write are music tuition books, but they're not about how to play the instrument. They're about how to play music and particularly how to improvise. My specialty is jazz. So the books I write are suitable for all instruments. And the nature of transposing instruments tend to fall into 4 categories. So there are different editions of this kind of same book: concert pitch, B flat pitch, E flat pitch, and bass clef. If that makes any sense.
It makes a sort of sense to me. So in the past currently you've been a jazz musician, as your name brilliantly suggests.
Yes, it does help a bit, yes. So I've been a professional musician for almost 30 years now and a teacher for about 25 years as well alongside that. I did a music degree at the University of London and in a general music Bachelor of Music. I moved to New York for a year and studied out there. Came back and went to the Conservatoire at the Guildhall and did a postgraduate diploma in jazz performance. And then since then, I've done a lot of freelancing. I've worked on cruise ships. I've played with symphony orchestras, West End shows. I've toured a lot. Basically, I've played in lots of weird and wonderful places with lots of weird and wonderful people. So it's been a lot of fun. I still work as a musician, but I've kind of a little bit more focused on the sort of jazz world now, which I mainly specialise in. So I have a few bands that I currently work with. And my wife's a fantastic jazz musician. She was with Humphrey Littleton's band for a few years before he passed away. So we do some gigs together. I play with a band called the Alison Rayner Quintet, which we won the Parliamentary Award last year for Best UK Jazz Ensemble. And I play with a Latin jazz band called Head South.
Well, that's absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it keeps me busy.
Yeah. So in terms of the 5 questions, the first one is, why do you write? I guess this is, in this case, more of a, what made you want to go into teaching music tuition and writing music tuition books?
Well, I've been a teacher for a long time as well. I've taught instrumental lessons in schools. I spent 7 years as a visiting professor on the jazz faculty at the Conservatoire in Greenwich. I run a jazz summer school, which I've been co-director for 15 years, and we have a 1-week residential course for adult learners, and we have some fantastic teachers on there, which I've learned a lot from over the years. I've worked for sort of arts companies. There's one down in Salisbury actually called La Folia. We do some really amazing work working with children, and so a few years ago, I wanted to get more focused on teaching jazz improvisation workshops and less on teaching instrumental work. So it was about 2 or 3 years ago, I set up my first jazz workshop for adults, which was a regular class that I ran. I set it up myself. Off the back of that, I then ended up running another jazz workshop. And off the back of that, I got involved with the local music centre and we set up a jazz school for children. So I've got now 2 classes running there every week for kids, primary and secondary school, teaching them improvisation. And through all of these workshops, which is probably over 150 workshops in the last 2 or 3 years, I've developed some methods and systems that I found work really well, particularly with less experienced musicians and players. And I basically ended up also with a lot of handouts and worksheets and things like this that I was giving the students, exercises, things I'd written out, little things I'd transcribed off records. So I was looking for a way of putting these all together into some sort of digital format, because it was getting ridiculous with all the bits of paper. And that's when I discovered the Apple Books, iBooks Author software. And I found that I could put it all into there. I use all Apple equipment. And then I found, as I learned more about how to use it, I discovered the sort of interactive functions built within that. And I could sort of see pretty quickly that this could be really useful for music education because you could embed the audio files directly into the electronic books. And then me being me, I got pretty carried away with it. And so that gave me an ideas for actually writing and putting together some material into these books. And as I learned more about it, I discovered that, you could publish these things. So originally for me, it was just to put something together to help my students so they could practice. But then I realized, I could reach more people by publishing. So I set up my own little publishing company last year, just so that I could get hooked up straight onto Apple and publish direct. I didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't know about these aggregators and third-party people that I could use, which would have made life much easier if I'd have known about it then.
Yeah.
So then as I started writing more, I thought, having had some experience of teaching at the conservatoire, jazz is often taught as something that is kind of like an advanced thing. So, traditionally a lot of students will go through their grades, they'll go on to music college, and then they'll start learning jazz at that point. But what I was finding that if you could introduce it at a much earlier stage, and the children love it, they love improvising, it's very natural to them. So there was these different things that I was developing, and I thought there's a little gap in the market here. If I can start putting some of this stuff out, so from a jazz perspective and improvising perspective, but from sort of day dot. So as you learn from scratch, you are automatically embedding the improvisation and play into learning. And so I thought that this would be a good thing. And the other sort of students I have are there's a lot of classical musicians that have trained who are very fearful of improvising. So again, I was trying to find some things that would help them. So that's how I got started, basically. And then, of course, at Christmas I discovered you guys, which was a bit of a game changer. So Christmas Eve, I was walking down the high street trying to find a present, and at this point, so I published my first book on Apple last March, and by December I had 9 books up there. And I was thinking I need a bit of help with marketing these things and, getting the word out a little bit. And I was walking down the high street and I thought, I wonder if there's a podcast or something I can listen to help with a bit of marketing. And, boom, you guys popped up. So I thought, this looks interesting. I had a little listen, and it was the episode where you were interviewing Joseph Alexander. And I literally stopped in the street. And I couldn't believe I was hearing this. It was just fantastic, because here's this guy who's 6-7 years ago done exactly what I'm trying to do now and set up this incredible company, and it's been very successful. And he was talking about his self-published Millionaire book and giving practical advice about people wanting to publish. And he has a consultancy that he runs. So I got straight home and emailed him and sent him my books and said, I'm looking for some help. Would you be interested in doing some consultancy work for me? I need some help with pushing these books. And he wrote back, to cut a long story short, and said it might be a good idea if we worked together on something. He liked what I was doing. And so in the new year, I started writing a book for him. He offered me a publishing contract. And now I've got 2 books out on Amazon through Fundamental Changes, and we're working on getting the 3rd one out very soon.
Fantastic.
So that was that was great. I mean, what a Christmas present.
Yeah. Did you actually find a Christmas present in the end on Christmas Eve?
I think it was a box of chocolates or something like that.
It'll
It wasn't
do.
a great present. I think I was too busy. I was just desperate to get home and email Joseph. So yeah, sorry about that. So, so yes, it's been quite a roller coaster this year, and this year has been incredible because then off of the back of that, I came to the London Book Fair. I met all you guys.
Yeah.
Spent the night in the pub with John Dyer, which was great fun, and and I met Joseph and Tim as well, who works with Joseph. So I feel extremely fortunate now to be in a position where I'm working with these guys. I have that sort of expertise behind me, and they're just incredible. They're just so good to work with, so easy to work with, so helpful, and they're musicians, so they, I can talk to them about music, and they really get it. So I feel very very fortunate, and so I'm just sort of carrying on with what I'm doing here. I had Joseph was very generous, actually, very happy for me to keep doing the Apple books. So I just launched 8 new books last week, a set of scales practice guides that I had already put together back in March, I think. So when I submitted my first draft to Joseph, there was a little delay because he was away. He went to India and he got sick, actually, and then he came back, and there was a little bit of a gap. And having been slogging away writing this book, I was very much in the groove. So I had an idea for some more Apple books, so I wanted to get them done, and so they're out now. But I'm back onto pretty much all focused on writing this stuff for Joseph now. These fundamental changes books. We've got a series, beginner jazz improvising, and then there's another series, a follow-up series to that, which I'm already kind of started on, the intermediate series. And the books that we write for Joseph are slightly different because the Apple books I've got are they're very generic. So I tend to write the information up the front, and then there's a series of exercises that you play along with. Whereas the books Joseph writes and his style, I mean, he has a very a big library of books currently out there. So he has a house style, which I had to adjust and fit to. And his style is great because it's much more like a one-to-one lesson, and the text sort of runs through the book, and each exercise is explained a little more. It's more like as you go along. It's kind of like if you were having a lesson with somebody. That's the kind of model for that. Whereas the Apple books I'm doing are more like practice guides where you get some information, then you get all the exercises after. So it was some adjustment to that, but it's taking up quite a lot of my energy and attention at the moment, but I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Nice. Well, question number 2 is how do you write? And normally we'd be talking to a sort of a fiction writer, and there'd be plotter or pantser, but I imagine it's kind of a different process for writing a music tuition book.
Yes. So I don't know about other musicians, but the way I work is running all these jazz workshops that I do. I've got a great opportunity to try stuff in there. So I've already got, for a start, I've already got a lot of material. So it's a question of how to format that into a book format for me at this stage. I'm not short on things of what to write. But for instance, this next series that I'm looking at with Joseph is going to be based on playing over what we call rhythm changes, and I've got some ideas. So I've already taken stuff into workshops and workshopped it. I've already done 3 or 4 workshops on the material that will then go into the book. So it's very much tried and tested. I really like to know that what I'm writing and putting in the books really works, and it will work for anyone. So the idea is that anybody could get the book and kind of teach themselves through the process, or other teachers could use those books to teach their students. So that's one thing. As I was just explaining about the slightly different formats of the Apple books. The Apple books have all the audio tracks embedded in them.
Right.
So those books are all written in iBooks author software. So there's some great interactive fixes. You can embed audio and video which is what I've been using there. So I tend to put everything together in there. With Joseph's books, they're in print and they're on Kindle, and then all the audio goes onto his website, so you can get free audio downloads after you purchase the book.
Right.
So it's just a slightly different format. So in terms of software, I mean, one of the first things I found, I mean, it's great having an editor now. So he kind of tore my grammar apart a little bit on the first draft, which was fantastic. And I immediately wrote back and said, thanks, this is really just what I needed. And off the back of that, I went out and bought Grammarly Pro. So I run everything through that. But after having written quite a lot this year, I'm finding now that I don't tend to need to use that quite so much, because there's things you learn, obviously, as you do it, it highlights. So that was really helpful. Unclear antecedents, which I didn't know existed, but apparently it's a thing. So you can't start a sentence with this. So there's just little things that you train yourself as you do it. Anyway, so that was a bit of software. With Joseph's books, we write in Word, and so I had to buy that because I'm all Mac. Everything I use is Mac. So that was a bit of learning the software there. And what we tend to do as well, we use Dropbox a lot. So that's a really useful resource to send stuff backwards and forwards. And they have an online version of Word, so you can write online, and it's up there already. You don't need to back it up, if that makes sense. I'm not quite sure how that works. But then, of course, there's the music software. So within the books, obviously, you've got the explanations of the text and everything. But then we have a lot of notation, notated examples. And the software I use for that is a program called Finale. And that allows me to create all the musical templates and examples and all of the scores and write the tunes and things like that. And that gets exported out to JPEGs or PDFs, I'm not sure. And then there's the actual audio. So every single exercise in the books has a play along audio track, and very often at different tempos as well. So these are fantastic resources for practicing and learning, because what happens is when you play along with an audio version of the thing that you're trying to play, which you're reading from the notation as well, it's very good for developing your skills. You can hear if you make a mistake. It helps with the timing. It helps with playing the rhythms. A lot of people struggle with reading rhythms. So when they hear the correct version, they play along with it. It's a good way to learn. So we create audio files for everything. And actually that takes a lot of time. So I create all those in a program called Logic Pro. Some of it's MIDI piano. I had to get piano sample library, so you get a nice piano sound. And then some of the exercises in the book, which are dealing more with particular instrumental technique, I get in professional musicians to do recording sessions, and we record the audio here. I do it at my home, and so again, that's more audio files, but slightly different to the exercises. So there's a lot that goes into the books. It's quite a process.
Obviously, you've got 19 books out, and you started. Well, you said you started. Was it last March? That's quite prolific.
I guess. Yeah, I tend to get quite obsessive when I get into something. Yeah, I do get a bit. I mean, some of my close friends have recently asked me, "Are you all right? Is everything okay?" I don't know if I'm having some midlife crisis, but no, I tend to. I just really get going when I get going, So the other thing I got last year was I got myself a laptop, which I'd never had before because I didn't really need one. So and that meant I could write also wherever I was. Yeah. So that enables me to get a lot more done. So for instance, I was on tour with the band last September in Germany. We had 10 days out there, and we were in the tour bus going around. So I literally wrote a book in the back of the tour bus between Germany, and we went up to Scotland as well. The reader magnet I wrote in the wings of Glyndebourne Opera House. In between rehearsals, I did. It was very unusual for me, but I was actually in an opera on the stage playing a clay pot, dressed up as a spirit from the underworld.
Fair enough.
And as you do, it's a gig, isn't it? Someone says. But what was interesting was there was 3 weeks of rehearsals for that, which I've never done 3 weeks rehearsing for anything in my life. So I was driving backwards and forwards to Glyndebourne for 3 weeks, hanging around in the wings, had my laptop, wrote the reader magnet in there, in the wings of the Opera House, dressed up as a spirit from the underworld. But mostly I work at home. I have a study. I've set myself up here. I take my laptop I still go into school a couple of days a week. Sometimes the students don't turn up, I'll get half an hour, get a bit done on that. So you just got to be, I've just tried to use all the time I can, every bit of time I got.
Yeah.
So,
well, that leads into question number 3, which is, are you a full-time author?
Well, I guess not, but I don't really have any plans to be. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to give up performing and teaching music. It's what I've done, all my life now, and it's who I am. I'm a musician, so obviously I'm never going to give up doing that. But it would be nice to be able to afford to cut down on a few things, or at least hire a bit of help, I think. So admin is the thing that I'm drowning in now. It's the start of a new financial and academic year this week, so the admin's unbelievable. But I sort of know what you mean. I did kind of give up the day job a long time ago. So I've been self-employed I'm just going into my 30th year of self-employment. So the last sort of full-time salary job I had was 1990, and I've never had the same week twice since then. So but I do have a lot on my plate right now, and I probably can't keep this rate up forever. So it would be nice to, just if the books were to. I think that's what I discovered through you guys. Originally, last year when I was starting this, I was sort of seeing the books as a little bit of a supplement to my teaching, and I think since discovering you and taking the courses and really seeing the potential and the global reach of that you have and that Joseph has, it's made me realize that maybe these books, who knows, possibly, hopefully, the books could be the main thing, and the teaching could supplement those. I mean, who knows? I'm very happy with what I'm doing now, though. So I've no plans to stop anything other than just maybe take my foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah. Cool. Well, question number 4 is, what mistakes do you think you've made, and what have you got right?
Yeah. So, well, obviously, when I started out last year, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no template to follow. I couldn't really see. There was nothing really quite like what I was trying to put together. And so I think what I did wrong was I put way too much in my first book. I mean, it's absolutely monumental. I think there's 1,340 audio files.
Oh, wow.
And there's 4 editions of that. So that's like over 5,000 audio tracks to get together. So that was a mountain to climb. And then once I'd finished it, I thought I looked into getting it online. And I didn't know about the aggregators and companies like Publish Drive. So I decided to do my own publishing company so I could publish direct to Apple, and that was a lot of pain, So getting that up and running, mostly dealing with. They were very helpful. The IRS, you have to get a tax code and all the rest of it, and fill in all the paperwork. And they, for some reason, they don't do email, so they were very helpful on the telephone and offered to fax me the paperwork. So then I thought, well, how am I going to get a fax? I don't have it. So then I went into school and I was asking the secretary, I said, have you got a fax machine? I need to get a fax. So she calls the IT guy who's 23 and doesn't know what a fax machine is, right? So he's getting this old machine out the cupboard, dusting it off, trying to hook it up to the network. I'm trying to explain to him what a fax is and where the paper comes out, all the while on the mobile phone to the IRS at 35 quid a call. So that was a bit ridiculous. I could have avoided all that if I'd have known better, So yes, I think doing everything on your own in the dark is hard, but there's no need for that now. There's so much out there, There's so many things to do it. In terms of what I think I did right, obviously, when I found you guys, I just jumped right in, and I got straight into the back catalogue, which is a great resource. And it was when I was doing the Glyndebourne gig. It was an hour each way there and back, so that was like 2 episodes every day, and I just listened to everything on there. I took the 101 course. Where are we this year? This spring, wasn't it? I think it came out.
Yeah,
and that's a game changer. I mean, just that everything you need is in there. That just changed everything in terms of seeing the bigger picture, and setting up the whole platform, as you say, with the mailing list and automations and things like this. So that was a really good move. I'm still very new to this. This is all new to me, and I've a steep learning curve. I know I've got a lot to learn. But I think what I've done right is also having the experience I've got of 30 years working as a musician and all my years of teaching, is I kind of try to transfer some of those skills and philosophies. So I know that it's going to take time. I know that I'm going to have to work hard and figure things out and find out as much as I can. And so I think what I've done is, although I've been writing a lot, it's that awareness of seeing the bigger picture and thinking, okay, there's still a lot to get done here and a lot to learn. So, and not being overwhelmed by that, I think, is the thing, isn't it? Yeah. And the other thing I got right, obviously, was reaching out to Joseph and sending him that email on Christmas Eve. That was a very good move. Yeah. But I think what helped was, I mean, so basically, I was in a position where I could say to Joseph, look, this is what I've done. Check this out. As opposed to saying to him, oh, I've got an idea for a book. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So I think having something there already, however, unrefined it was, it shows that you're serious about what you're doing, I think. And when you show someone that, they can look at that and go, wow, that's a lot of work. This guy's not messing about. So I think that was also a factor in what helped with getting the deal with Joseph, is that I had something to show him already.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? You gotta just crack on and get some done and get something written, get something out there, get something to show. You got to have that as your kind of audition piece, if you like, in the musical sense. So,
yeah. Well, fifth and final question, which you've touched on a little bit just then, is what's your final piece of advice for authors starting out in indie publishing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like too much of a newbie to be giving advice to other authors, but it's still, like I say, I'm still learning. But what I do try to do is give myself advice, which I'm happy to share. And as I said, it's like trying to use those previous experiences. So one of the things that I tell my students a lot, of course, is you have to do it every day. You have to play your instrument and practice every day. You have to commit yourself to it. And so that any new skill that you're trying to develop is exactly the same. You've got to put the time in. I tend to get, as I said, totally obsessed with things, and I'm literally thinking about it all the time. My wife, Jo, bless her, she's very understanding, but I can see, the eyes glaze over when I start talking about an idea for another book again, because I'm just on about it all the time. So I do. It's you just that sort of a bit of obsession. I think this can be a good thing if it's channeled properly. The other thing I would advise people, again in music and that applies to this, is find the best teacher you can, and learn everything you can get from them. So for anyone wanting to do self-publishing or write, I mean, obviously SPF is the place to go. So that's just learn, get everything you can get off that's out there. But then also, and this is something I've tried to do for myself, because it can get a bit overwhelming. So there's so much to do. So try not to overwhelm yourself. Just focus on one thing at a time and just deal with that, get it done, then move on to the next thing. And that's how I try to work. I find I get much more stressed if I've got more than one book on the go. which I did recently. I got those. I had those 8 books all going out last week, and I've got this 3rd book for Joseph I'm trying to finish off, and I found that actually quite mentally challenge. It's a lot on your mind. Yeah. So once you get one done, you can just get on to the next book. So that's advice I'm giving myself now.
Nice.
And the other things are obviously in music. What we say is always try to play with the best musicians you can. So be humble enough to allow yourself to be the worst player in the band, and that's how you learn fast. Don't try to be too intimidated. So for me, hooking up with Joseph and Tim, it's been a blessing because they're so experienced and great at what they do, and I completely appreciate the opportunity I've got to be working with them. So I'm grateful for any advice that I can get from them. I mean, I know a lot about music, but I don't know a lot about publishing. So it's I'm very grateful for any tips and advice I can receive about that. So and it's great because, as I said, they're musicians, so I can talk to them about 251s and mixolydian modes, and they know what I'm talking about. They're not just fixing my grammar and syntax, and they can completely understand the content of the books and the ideas and methods that I'm incorporating. So I'm very, very fortunate. I think the last bit of advice is to be brave, really. Don't worry too much about what other people might think. Don't let people put you off or talk you out of it. If you've got something you feel you need to create and express, then you should do it. If you've got a story you want to tell, then write it. Life's not a rehearsal. Yeah. You got to go for it. You just got to do these things, these creative things. There's a tune we play in the Latin band. It's called "Make That Space," and it's dedicated to making space to do creative things in your life that you want to do. Because if no one finds time, you have to make time. And with all the incredible resources that are available now on the internet, it's amazing what you can achieve on your own with just a laptop computer. And so just make the most of it, really. Do it, get on with it. And as I heard somewhere, it's never been a better time to be a writer.
Perfect. Yeah, well, those are your 5 questions, and that's fantastic.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. It's a real thrill to be here, and thanks to you guys for all the great work you do for everybody.
No problem. Have you got any gigs lined up?
Well, funny you should say that. I've got my website, busterbirch.co.uk, has all the gigs on there. We've got a tour coming up with ARC. We're going down to the West Country, and I've got breaking news. This has not gone out before. We're playing. Well, ARC are playing at the London Jazz Festival this year, but I've also managed to get a slot for my jazz school. So I'm taking all the kids from our BYMT jazz school to Uptown, and they'll be performing at the London Jazz Festival in the Royal Festival Hall free foyer stage on 23rd of November. It's a Saturday. So that'll be great to see the kids up there, and it's going to be a fantastic experience for them to be playing at the London Jazz Festival. I'm really thrilled about that.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, great to have you on.
Thanks, Tom. I really appreciate it.
That's it for this week's Self-Publishing Spotlight. Don't forget that you can get your free self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. And if you want to appear as a guest on this show, send us brief details about yourself and your writing at selfpublishingformula.com/spotlight-guest. I'm Tom Ashford, and I'll see you again next week.